I'm now legally required to say that it was a hypothetical situation. But I tell you something that isn't a hypothetical situation right now is all these layoffs that we're seeing because of AI in
the AI Shift podcast. Let's go.
AI in bunny quotes there for anyone listening to the audio. We've seen Microsoft announce it, Coinbase have announced it, and as of the recording of this, Cloudflare. Yeah. I wanted to call it something else. I couldn't think what it was. Cloudflare have just announced 1,100 layoffs as well. So it's
or 24%. I think that's probably statistically is probably more the fact that it's a quarter of the company, right?
Yes. Yeah. But it's happening. It's happening. AI's taking over, stealing all our jobs. It's the end. Communism is the only way now.
Is it though? Is it actually the end, or is it all just?
Is it more excuses to get rid of dead wood?
Well, or just the natural progression of technology, right? Like, it's a. I do wonder if there is there was a trainer company, wasn't there, that announced the other week that they were shifting to AI. What was it called? Sneaker company. Did you see this?
No.
Allbirds. So Allbirds is a San Francisco-based sneaker brand, and they basically announced that they were becoming an AI data center company. So they sold the shoe assets to American Exchange Group, and then the company is now raising $50 million to purchase GPUs and provide compute power. And their stock price just surged. It just went crazy.
Was it like a late April Fool's joke, or?
Well, it was in April, but
that's pretty crazy. I know that you've got to pivot to survive in industry, but
they took it up a whole new level. I suppose that's one thing.
Another level.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a question mark on there's a balance, right? Because Square, the financial company that's now called Block, by good thing we have ability to search.
Yeah, maybe we should start making notes for these things.
Yeah, maybe that's true. Actually, yeah, let's actually have a plan. Jack Dorsey has a financial services company called Square. They were the ones who had like the dongles that would go into the phone, and you could swipe do payment terminals and stuff. Right, that got called Block, and they announced a 50% reduction of staff about 4 or 5 months ago. In theirs, and again, the stock obviously went up after the announcement of the news. Likes of Shopify and stuff have made their own kind of. I don't know if they've got rid of people, but they've basically said you now have to prove that you can't achieve an objective with AI if you want to hire more people into your team. So it's a default kind of AI first kind of mentality. So, I guess we've chatted about this kind of off podcast a bit, and I would say we take slightly opposing views on if this is good or bad. So, which bodes well for a great debate.
Yeah, definitely does. I was looking at some of the comments on Twitter, on X, this morning around the Coinbase one.
And positive, I imagine.
Oh yeah, it was. If you ignore all the grok posts of can I see Cloudflare in a bikini, then it was interesting. There was some people that were they were claiming that they were just offshoring, right? For cheaper resources. Other people. There was one guy who was like, you at Cloudflare keep saying about how it's just improving how fast you can do stuff. It's a multiplier, like we've talked about on here, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, but now you're getting rid of everybody. How could it be a multiplier if you're getting rid of everybody? It's like, well,
it's a super.
That's
multiplier.
Exactly why. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's definitely an element of like, I've seen it firsthand with like training and stuff where people embrace this, embrace the technology, and then they get like a 10 to 15% productivity bump in what they're doing. And I think we're going to see that across the world. But I think that probably just takes the heat off people in their jobs, right? So, they're not having to, they're able to be a bit more kind of on top of it. And maybe that instills an element of growth because they have the mental space to, focus on. Because most people use this for stuff that is not a human like skill or value, right? It's creating presentations, sorting out emails, making calendar invites. It's all that kind of rubbish typically. And that bump of kind of 10 to 15% probably takes all that stuff away. The issue comes when the bump is 60% or 80% or 90%, and then you can't pull the narrative anymore that this is for the optimization of people. Like, you're going to get rid of 50% of the staff if you're getting an 80% benefit, or the company has to go after double the market share.
Yeah. I think the thing that concerns me about it is that over the last about 5 years, 6 years, we've had some large scale layoffs, right? We had COVID layoffs, then that all came round, and then there was a load of layoffs then done, and then blamed on COVID because the companies were still trying to recoup the money that they'd lost during that time. And every time that's happened, a lot of it's been in the States, and in the UK industry have then gone, oh, well, if America's getting rid of loads of people, we need to do it. So it's then happened over here, and it's happened not just at that top level big company sort of level, the massive enterprise. I've seen it trickle all the way down to SMEs, and seen those like hemorrhaging staff left, right, and centre. And off the back of that, like as a contractor, I've seen a reduction in the amount of permie and contract roles available. But also, there's been a race to the bottom on day rates. I think that a lot of the roles that I've seen now, day rates are probably around 50% lower than what they were pre-COVID. And my concern is that as more and more of these companies optimize for AI or for profits or whatever it is that they're doing in whatever reason they're using, is that we're going to see that impact trickle down to these companies that really shouldn't be impacted, and should be really utilizing all of those extra staff and those people that they could bring on to improve their businesses. But I think what I'm concerned is that they're going to sort of go, well, we're going to get a 20% increase in productivity, so we'll reduce our workforce by 20%, and then we'll stay at that same level. Which then makes people in my situation, makes their lives harder, right? Because we're out here as hired guns, to some extent, looking for the work, and they're like, oh, we don't need it now. And then when they do bring us in, they're like, well, it's not that hard, is it? Because you just fire up your AI and your AI does the work. So it's easy. It comes back to that scenario. I don't know if I've talked about it on this podcast before, but I had a customer turn up and demand to sit with me while we did some branding work. Because he didn't know what he wanted, but he knew what it was when he'd see it. So we sat for 20 minutes, half an hour with him as we went through, and we tweaked the branding, tweaked his iconography and all of that sort of stuff. And he was like, that's it. That's what I wanted. And then he turned to me and said, well, yeah, and it took you half an hour to do that. Why am I paying you so much money for it? And it's like, yeah, well, it took me 20 years to be able to do that in half an hour. And I think it's going to be another case of that situation right now. Because even though AI is doing a fantastic job with some of these things, you still need that experience to know whether it's done it right. You know, if you gave it to someone with no experience, is it going to produce the right output for them? You know, that's
yeah. I have an opposite view of that, obviously. Otherwise, this podcast would be far too.
It'd be really short. You just go, yes.
Yeah. That sounds good. I lost train of thought on the multiple points now, but the day rate one in particular, I guess I'm quite surprised by. But that could also be economic as well, right? Like UK isn't in its most prosperous kind of state at the moment.
Yeah.
Or the perception, I think, is that it's not in its most prosperous, that word, state at the moment. And there is a easy way to justify for that to kind of trickle on, which is if companies aren't growing, if they aren't expanding, if new companies aren't being born, then there's no urgency to do things quicker. And typically contractors and those externally are an urgency kind of, catalyst, right? We need to bring in another company or another person to drive this thing better. Otherwise, we're going to fall behind. And, I think with the COVID thing, with the big company side of thing, like that was, you look at the numbers, especially from the Amazon stuff and Microsoft stuff, they overhired during that time because they thought that, everyone working from home was going to be this dramatic change to work environments and stuff. And we're seeing the rollback of that with, return to office and things in a lot of places. So they, I think, were course correcting in many ways because they had the profits to absorb it, right? Like it wasn't like they didn't have the money. But I think these companies, they aggressively hire, particularly in the States, and they hire for headcount rather than for, I think, true ability. So you get a lot of people who, are earning crazy kind of six-figure salaries for making presentations and just overseeing people, but not in a leadership way, just in a babysitting way. So when you kind of couple in all of the like you said, the realignment after the pandemic, and you then bring AI into the mix, there is an element, I think, of recalibration as to what is valuable. I'm surprised the effects are being seen so prevalently now with things like the layoff announcements and like what you're saying, where it's trickling down to smaller companies, because in a lot of the work that I've done around training and working with organizations, I still don't see the adoption levels I would expect to see with how accepting AI is within the zeitgeist from just a general lifestyle perspective. If you consider like how everywhere it is for everyone, there's still an element of people using it for very low quality tasks, even though the tooling is available for more higher quality tasks. And because of that, I would say I don't think the actionable work from people is being optimized to the level with AI that the reactionary firing is being. It feels like it's more, like you said, it's more of an excuse rather than like we're seeing these wins. Yeah. And maybe the exception to that is the tech companies, because they probably are a bit more seeing them wins because they have a technical pool of talent who can, because I think the biggest issue at the moment for business users is the tooling's great from like zero to kind of one to start. But then if you want to really use the tools and you really want to get into automating workflows and multiple systems and stuff, you still need a bit of a technical kind of understanding to plug them things together. Yeah. Whereas the tech companies probably have that.
Yeah, I think the bitterness around the Cloudflare one is that earlier this year, bearing in mind we're in May, so we're not exactly that far into the year, they announced that they were going to be taking on 1,100 interns. So it's like there's some bitterness there because those numbers magically align with that 25% to 1,100 they're laying off, with that they were going to take on 1,100 interns. Whether there's
they the ones that fired,
any truth to it, we don't know. I don't know. Well, obviously just got to suck it and see, because it's only been out a few hours, I think, from looking at that post. Because
it'd be interesting if that's because you can see that therefore then it's more just classic kind of growth market share tap, right? Which is, you automate the process, you bring in interns and junior cheapest people, and then you get rid of the expensive people, and then it trickles down. Or did they bring in the interns, realize they weren't capable, and decide to then get rid of them, because the competent people were able to out kind of perform, others. I think, because I honestly think if you use this technology well, I think you are a 10-person team. Six minimum.
Yeah.
So I think, if you're capable and competent, and you're, and I think typically from more of the experience side, so you have domain expertise in that particular, whatever the vertical may be. I think it's a hard justification to get rid of you on the premise of of financial.
Yeah, and as another example to spin this in a different way to the two we talked about, I know somebody who was brought into a UK company, probably slightly bigger than an SME, but I don't think I'd say they were full enterprise level. They were on their way, right? Maybe large business. He was brought in to introduce AI working to the dev teams there. They ran an introduction to it, a bit of training, got everybody using it in the training. They then looked at the usages after 3 months, and the only people that were using it was the guy they brought in to introduce it and one other person in the team. The rest of the team weren't using it at all because they could obviously see from their accounts. They then had a meeting and said, look, you need to be using this to augment yourself, get yourself working smarter. And then within the next 1 to 2 months, the entire team left because they all had the attitude of, I don't want to use AI, I don't want to be replaced by it. So like that company lost its staff because it wanted to introduce AI, which is an extreme case, right?
Yeah, but also I just don't think that's an option now, right?
Yeah. I think it's stupid not to be at least playing with it and understanding it, because it's where the job's going to be in the near future, or is now, I guess you could argue. But yeah, it's a very strange mindset to have, to say I'd rather go and work somewhere else where they work me into the ground to produce stuff.
But you'd assume, therefore, there was other things potentially going on, right? Because, I think that maybe it's probably maybe a final straw type situation. If you have a good company and a good kind of dynamic, then, again, it comes down to leadership, right? It comes down to that thing of in the UAE where I'm based, there is I wouldn't say maybe it is a mandate, but there is a vision from from the government, from the president, from the leadership around really, really driving AI forward, and having it across all government departments, having to become an AI native society, and yeah, I'm sure some of that is a PR thing to kind of to drive it. But I've worked on these things. It genuinely is true, right? There is initiatives and there is a desire to ride it through. Now, here there is the advantage that they're a growing economy, right? It's a growing workforce, so you can absorb the efficiencies from this stuff because they're looking to double, triple the population, right? From that perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess everything in the UK is going towards shrinking, right?
Exactly right. Yeah, and you look at the States, and the States is this massive market, so that's different. If you look at Southeast Asia, again, I think there's an element of, with all this stuff, you kind of got a choice in the matter, which is, do you want as a country or as a company, do you want a global kind of footprint? That there's I take the view personally that a lot of big companies have a lot of people that just shouldn't be there. It's like they're just filling, right? Either from a managerial perspective or just from a incompetence, right? There's a lot of companies, they're human capital. If you can't do something, you hire someone to do the thing rather than learn how to do the thing yourself. Now, how does that then mirror across with AI? You would hope that the person then doesn't hire someone to do it, they get AI to do it. realistically, they're probably still going to hire someone, and that person's going to have to learn AI to do the thing.
Yeah.
But for me personally, I think we'll just end up having people leave and build much smaller, nimbler companies where they can drive forward because they have the connections, they have the relationships, and when they leave, they can use the knowledge they've done and build out an agentic workforce in, time's not even a thing, right? If you're going to employ 10 people at, let's just say 50 to 100 grand each, your starting base is £500,000, million quid. Yeah. So that's where you've got to hit, whereas you can run these agents for $100 an agent.
Yeah, and I think maybe these people that are running scared, they're running scared because it's going to be more obvious that they're not pulling their weight. Because where we're talking about seeing a 20 to 30% increase in productivity, maybe they're realizing that if we adopt the AI stuff, we're going to see a 90, 120% increase because they weren't doing anything, right?
Yeah.
Because I've worked with a lot of businesses where a lot of the team have been dead weight and they've not been doing anything. They all sort of like fall into that little area, right? Of like we're getting just enough to keep management off our back, but we're not making any real progress. But I'm making a check at the end of the month, so
And people,
what do they call it? Silent quitting. They're kind of doing that, They're just doing what they need to do.
I think some people generally, are lazy. Some people are just not competent. But then I think others look at it and go, I earn this amount of money, I should be earning double, so I'm going to give it half the effort now. And they're not going to share I guarantee you, half the people who use an AI don't tell the rest of the team they're using AI or the company, right? They're just trying to basically take the edge off because they want a bit of work-life balance, and that's understandable. But if companies want people to really drive it forward, the companies you're seeing all these big changes from are the tech companies, probably because the leadership is using the technology.
Yeah.
So they have a first-hand experience of seeing what it can do, right? And also their peers are other tech, leaders who also will have the same thing. So they know it's not Sally who runs a cement plant. It's people who are working in that kind of tech space and is seeing the wins of of AI initiatives within coding or within marketing. Like you look at Anthropic and their go-to-market guy for Claude Code, I think maybe it was all of Claude, was one guy for 8 months. And he used Claude Code without coding to build out the funnels, to bring out the scheduling and all that stuff. And it was one dude.
Right.
And there's an interview and a video of him talking about it. So you can see they're not hiding from it, and I think nor should they. I think there's I feel like I don't know if it's a ongoing repetitiveness I've said in this podcast or just generally in life, but I just see it's a massive unlock. It's just the layoffs and stuff that are happening. Yes, you're getting laid off because you're unlucky. Like some of it is not down to competence, right? It's purely just completely random 10% from the company. I feel for you. It's not great. Or you have the ability to now create something new, and you can do it in the 10th of the time as it would have been before. And for the time being, if you're technical in particular, or if you're highly domain specialized, you have a massive competitive advantage against everyone else for the next year.
Yeah. Yeah, I think where you need that specialism, I think is going to be, it's still safe bets, but I think that a phrase that you often hear is that once the average person starts talking about these things, it's over, right? We saw it with LimeWire. You see it with all those sort of technologies. As soon as it gets into the hands of the common person, it's done. And I've definitely heard in the last couple of weeks people in public talking about building websites using AI. Right? We're not talking applications. We're just talking basic websites. I think a lot of those small website shops are going to are going to feel the pain at some point as well, unless they can suddenly start pumping out a lot more.
And that's the thing, or just better, right? If they I think there's an opportunity to. One thing actually, so I have found myself, because we do the podcast and stuff, I found myself like having to use a lot of new tools, right? So like social media things for like clipping, for scheduling posts, for writing articles, all these types of things, stuff that's not within the Cody kind of development space. And they have a lot of features because their audience, I guess, typically is someone who wants like, it's a social marketing suite of products, right? And I'm like, I just want the scheduling bit because I have a workflow for everything else, or I just want the text to speech bit. And you can't get that for like a couple of dollars, right? So you then have to ask yourself the question of, okay, how do I turn, do I use this particular product and pay $50 a month, or do I roll my own, right? So like I had to do some video recordings for some training videos. So I use Loom, right? I've used it before. Again, it's I think it's $29 a month, something like that, right? It's not crazy expensive, but it's a screen recorder, right? I don't need to edit. I don't need any of the other features. I don't even need to like see myself in the corner realistically. I just want to record my screen. And I would use QuickTime, but there's a bug on Mac for QuickTime where the sound sometimes goes, so you can't trust it if you're recording like a long video, and it's a known bug. So you have to use a tool. This thing's Loom, solid product, but it's like let's call it $25 a month. So that's $300 for the year. There's a tool called Cap, which is an open source product. So you can see the code, and it's $29 for the year or $58 for a lifetime. And to be fair, it also has an editor and a little bit of that type of stuff. But all I want it to is record. And I'm like, I feel quite happy paying $25 a year for that specific product. Just that it does that one thing. And I wonder if we're going to start to see a bit of a growth now.
Micro SaaS.
I wouldn't even say SaaS. Shareware. I think we might see more, because you see a lot of these in Europe, right? You see a lot of these companies that are smallish companies, like they do maybe 10, 20 million kind of turnover, and they build like a product, right? And it's normally things like, a PDF, library, or a voice note application, or like to-do list, for example, Todoist, just these, like they build a very specific product for a certain niche, and I wonder if now, like when iPhone App Store came out, we had this kind of insurgence of building quite bespoke applications for a task.
Yeah.
For the iPhone, and you would pay, people would pay $1, $5, $10, whatever it was, and that created obviously some quite, single founder kind of, organizations or just product people. I wonder if we're going to get the same, because people are going to use AI to create a thing, and you're going to look at this and go, right, Cap, for example, is an open source product. If I really wanted to, I could download the code, I could build it, or I could just pay the $29 for the year, and just download the binary, the file, and run it, and be like, okay, I'm happy to pay that. Do I want to pay $300, or do I download the code and build it? Right?
Yeah.
And also Loom then does all this extra stuff that I don't want. When I record something, just stick it on my machine. I don't need you to upload it to the server so I can edit it, Rant over.
Yeah. I think a lot of these things, they get built to a certain point and then they decide, well, let's put some value add into it, and then those value add then become bigger features, and I think the businesses then get greedy and go, well, we should be charging more for this because it does more. But as you say, like,
or it's a land grab,
do we need
right?
all that? Mm.
You have you potentially have a company that has there's a tool, Loom for example got bought by Atlassian, and they're still charging $23, $24 or whatever it is a month for it. But now it's a part of the Atlassian suite, because Atlassian, and it makes sense, they have Confluence, so it makes sense they have a screen recorder. Why they can't just wrap it into the Atlassian kind of total package, or maybe they do if you have a certain level, I guess. But I don't know. I just think that I think a lot of them VC backed, arguably feature products, like Loom is a feature product, I would say, screen recording. Yeah. I think they're going to get a little bit dismantled because you're going to just be able to get Claude or, Codex or Gemini or, any of these tools to write the thing for you.
Yeah. You're not gonna need that one specific thing, are you? From somebody else, you can just build it just as quick if you've got some understanding, I guess. Because I did see something on social media of a guy talking to Claude Code, and he said, "Build me Windows 12," and it went sure, and it went off, and it did a load of stuff. And what it built was actually a website that worked like a desktop.
Yeah.
Wasn't a full operating system.
Yeah, but conceptually, you probably could, right? You just have to throw enough kind of compute and tokens at it. I think it's NVIDIA. They announced that they got it to rewrite. Someone did it. They rewrote kernel basically. They got it to write a kernel from scratch.
Right. Okay.
So we're starting to get into like that kind of core technology stack type of thing, and potentially then obviously I think they rewrote it in Go or Rust or something. So it was kind of obviously got rid of all the C issues that you can have with memory addresses and things like that. But it's I do wonder, and especially with the linking it back to the layoff stuff, that probably is the big win, which is a lot of these companies that are having this effect are companies that build SaaS products. And I just don't think the sales pitch for SaaS works anymore, right? You pay $30, like for Loom, I'm going to pay $23 a month to screen record. What extra things are they going to bring out in the next year that is going to make that process for me better, realistically? I don't need any AI edit features. I don't need any collaboration features. I literally just need it to confidently record my screen. So they're going to get hit in the, they're going to get hit in their revenue because, like JetBrains. Have you did you use JetBrains for coding with AI? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I full suite. I don't use their AI. Their AI was pretty terrible.
Yeah. But I use it as an IDE.
Yeah, I use all their IDEs. I think they're great. Yeah.
So, and I agree. So I use JetBrains for years, right? My JetBrains renews in the next couple of weeks. I've cancelled the renew. I moved to VS Code, and
you're dead to me. I don't know who you are.
And it's not. And again, it's not because it's a bad tool. It's not a bad product. It's not massively. It's not overly expensive for what it is. I just don't need the level of developer tooling now because I don't write code anymore. If anything, I need a really good text editor.
Which VS Code is?
Which VS Code basically is, Yeah,
and I will fight anybody that wants to say that it's an IDE.
No, it's it's VS Code.
Yeah.
But it is a great text editor with plugins, right? So, and I think when you're when you look at that, I wonder how many other people will have the same thing, right? Or they move to something like Cursor, or they move to something, some other product.
Yeah.
Not even because they're trying to save the money, but because the product hasn't evolved. Like JetBrains, they added on the AI bit. They haven't reinvented the browser.
Yeah.
IDE.
Like maybe I stick my head in the sand a little bit on that one because of how much of a JetBrains fanboy I've become over the years. But like they've got all of these different IDEs all built on IntelliJ.
Yeah.
That could essentially all be one suite apart from Rider. Rider works different to all of the other ones. And that's why a lot of the plugins don't often work across it. But yeah, maybe they need to look at that, and yeah, because thinking about it, I have actually just had IntelliJ open more recently, and been doing a lot of other things with that. I've had like maybe WebStorm open with the websites in, but I've actually been editing them from IntelliJ. You know, when you've got multiple different projects running.
And that's the thing. Like I looked at, I have at any one time now, I'll typically have 5 or 6 IDE instances open. Machine can't handle 5 or 6 riders. You know,
you must be doing it wrong. I have all of those open.
Probably, yeah. Well, whereas 5 or 6 VS codes in dev containers, like it runs fine, right? And gives that visibility. And again, you know, other people might disagree, but I'm just saying from there is a X hundreds of dollars a year, or whatever the price is of it, is no longer going to get paid from my pocket to it. Not because I don't want to pay it, but because the product, when I used it and when there was a crunch point between using Claude Code in JetBrains, it wasn't as good as using it in VS Code.
Right, okay.
Because they only had the command line integration, not the kind of plugin interface. And that window of time just gave me the switch because it was a much more compelling product. And then I'd be intriguing to see if that is you look at Stack Overflow, right? Who would have thought Stack Overflow would get to the point of having basically 0 viewers that aren't bots?
Do you know what? Yeah, I hadn't thought about that because I haven't looked at Stack Overflow for years. And yeah, I used to sit on that. That used to be my lunchtime thing.
Yeah.
I'd go and sit and
How
Stack
many
Overflow and
people's,
answer questions.
like, corporate identity was their Stack Overflow rating?
Yeah.
You know, and it had the massive peak in COVID because everyone was at home and doing stuff. And then literally from that down, like you look at the chart for thing, obviously for the guys who founded it, they're lucky because they sold it obviously for $400 million before it all kind of went. But again, and I'm sure they've, Stack Overflow's done deals with the AI models and stuff from a coding perspective and etc. But you could argue they should have made a Stack Overflow model. They should have been the source of building a coding. Should have been called code.
I don't know. You look at some of the code you get on the, and it's bad enough now when if you try and do a commit with Claude, it's like co-authored by Claude Code. This should be written by Stack Overflow because they got that clause, haven't they? Now where if you use anything, you've got to put that in it. So that'll be all over your code base, and then you commit to be also written by Stack Overflow AI.
Yeah. It's an interesting one, and like you said, it'll be interesting to see what other companies before the end of the year will have their layoffs. But I guess in a mini kind of wrap up, I'm these companies who are dropping 10-15% of their staff, I'm surprised it's that low, if I'm honest. I'm when Jack Dorsey said from Block they were getting rid of 50 people, I was like, okay, that sounds more like a company that's really embracing the AI side of things and seeing the benefits. I think people are being quite conservative in public judgment. Cloudflare's stock dropped in 18% after hours after the announcement. So it's not like it went up. And they beat out expectations on revenue as well by like 20 million. So there is definitely a fear around it, even if you're the company, company in the leading space of it all.
Has it dropped it low enough that it's cheap enough to buy stocks in Cloudflare now?
Maybe a nominal. I think it's still $500 a share. Right?
Yeah, half a share.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right. Well, I guess we'll leave this doom and gloom episode here.
But it doesn't have to be doom and gloom, though. It can be empowering and positive. All them people who've been let go can now go off and set up their own ventures, and they can, follow their passions, and will they is another point.
Yeah, let me just write those words down. What were the empowering, positive?
Yeah,
I've not heard that one.
Optimism.
Before. Optimism. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll go and look those up and we'll report back next time.
Indeed. Until next week.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
The AI Shift Podcast. Let's go.